When I go camping, I like to use a hammock instead of a tent. So today, I'm going to show you how I set up my hammock, tarp, and underquilt for when I go camping. I just shot. So to get started, we're going to start with the hammock and the tarp. I put my tarp and my hammock all in this REI compression sack. Now I'm going to go through quite a few different items as I go through my setup. I'll put links to all those items down in the description. That way if you want to learn more about them, you can go check them out yourself. But I use this REI compression sack to put my hammock and my tarp all in one place. Let's get started with the hammock. So my hammock is the Warbonnet Outdoors Blackbird XLC. After using several Enos, had a friend that had this one, and the difference is night and day. I mean, this is a super high quality hammock. It's very, very comfortable. I used it for 7 nights this summer at Boy Scout camp and absolutely loved it. I'll show you some of the features as we go through the setup, but this is a fantastic hammock if you're ever interested. So the bag that it's in, the stuff sack, it's double-ended. So you just pull out the straps from each end when you put it up and then leave the bag hanging on the straps. Real easy setup. This is the hanging system that comes with the Warbonnet. It's this buckle system with straps and a carabiner. And we're just gonna wrap that around the tree about head high. We're just gonna wrap this end with the carabiner around the tree and then clip that carabiner back onto the strap itself. Pretty easy. All right, so I've got the hammock set up. And as you can see, it's pretty far in between these two trees, but I've still got plenty of straps on the Warbonnet to do this. You can see there's rocks, there's dead trees, all underneath my hammock. If you were trying to put a tent here, you'd never be able to get the tent there. So that's one reason that I really love to use this hammock. It gets you up off the ground. The hammock is laying a little bit low. That's where these little buckles come in and the straps. You just tighten up the strap through that buckle, bring that up. One of the features I absolutely love about the Warbonnet Outdoors Blackbird hammock is it has this extra piece of material here that forms a shelf in your hammock. You don't have to use it, but it's absolutely invaluable to me. I keep extra clothes up there, an extra blanket in case I get cold in the middle of the night, book I'm reading. It's just great for stuffing all kinds of stuff in there. You don't have to keep it underneath your hammock or in your backpack. You can keep it right there handy inside. So once I get the hammock hung, that's the next thing I do is stake out my shelf. Has a nice little shot cord with a latch, and you just stake it down. This with a tent stake. With my tent stakes, I like to put this night eyes cord around it. It's reflective and stands out, so it makes it a little easier to find your tent stakes when you're done camping. So we're just gonna stake that out. All right, over here on the opposite side of the shelf, you have something similar. This is on your bug net. It just pulls the bug net away from you so it's not sitting right on your face. And you just put that in the same way. It's got the shot cord with a place for your tent stake. Just pull that out, stick in that tent stake. And if you want to tighten it up, it's got the thumb latch here so you can just tighten that right up. Warbonnet builds their hammocks with the bug net built right in. But if you don't want the bug net, they actually make it so you can zip it all the way off. If you come up here, you can see right here there's a toggle and the zipper goes all the way around. Now that toggle needs to be through that piece of material. You can see this one kind of fell out, but that happens in transport. So you just want to make sure that's in there. I'm not going to take it all the way off, but you can see that you can unzip the whole bug net. You can also, if this is not attached, roll it up over that ridge line, and there's a tie here for you to just tie it off. So with this Blackbird, another thing that really sold me on it is it's double layered. So this gives you a place to put your sleeping pad and keeps it in place. Another really cool thing is the Blackbird is an asymmetrical cut hammock. This right here they call the foot box. You just stick your feet up in there, and then because of that, it just forces you into that diagonal position that helps flatten you out for a proper sleep in your hammock. Speaking of sleeping pads, here's mine. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. I actually just use Reflectix. I got an entire roll of this from Amazon for about $5 or $6. and created my own sleeping pad out of it. Reflectix is basically bubble wrap with Mylar film on both sides. So it's kind of like having two emergency sleeping blankets or space blankets with bubble wrap in between. It's very inexpensive, it's very lightweight, and works really well. Just unroll that and stick it in that little slot that the Blackbird has in it. And then since it's 2 layers, you're not even sleeping on that, you're sleeping still on your hammock material. Next up in my setup, I use an Eno Underbelly. This is basically a small hammock that you put underneath your full-size hammock and gives you a place to put shoes, your backpack, whatever. It's just a place to hold stuff so it doesn't sit on the ground. You don't have to strap it to a tree. It's going to be underneath your tarp so it won't get wet. So, and it's not very expensive, but it's a nice luxury item to have. So that comes in its own bag, and then you just attach it to each end of your strap system. So, and it's got that reflective night eyes cord on it too. And you're just gonna take that. I do 2 half hitches. Don't have to be fancy, just something to keep it in place. You're gonna do that on each end. And then once you have that done, it has these little stops where you can open it up and adjust how far you need it so that it sits under your hammock properly. So here's my Underbelly all installed. You can see it is literally a small hammock, and you just put whatever you need inside there. It's within easy reach of your hammock, so lots of equipment there that you can put in there, and I mean I can fit my whole backpack in there and it sits just fine. Next in my setup, especially when I'm here in Georgia in 20-degree weather, I have a kick-ass quilt underquilt. This is a synthetic quilt. It's fairly inexpensive. It's my first underquilt and my only underquilt. Haven't had a chance to test it too much, just a little bit, but this is definitely going to keep you much warmer, especially with that Reflectix pad underneath you also. So let's go ahead and set that up. For your underquilt, you have these little micro carabiners attached to shock cord that are in turn attached to your underquilt on each side. And I just come up here and I snap it on to my Amsteel line on each side. And you're going to want that obviously in between your underbelly and right up underneath your hammock. Once you have your underquilt just clipped in on both ends, that's when you want to adjust it and make sure it's fit properly underneath your hammock. So you can see right here, both pieces of my underquilt are on one side of my hammock. So immediately we need to get that over to the other side of my hammock, including underneath your sleeping pad, and do that all the way down. So you can see this underquilt has this shock cord in the end where you can really tighten it up against you and keep it loose. You don't want it so loose that it's not doing anything, but you got to remember that you're going to get inside that hammock, it's going to stretch down into it, so you don't want it real tight either. So you just want a little bit of space in between you and the underquilt. Kind of like that. So in addition to setting your underquilt up properly so that it hangs properly underneath your hammock, Kick-Ass Quilts has these nice little shock cords with carabiners and these loops sewn right into their underquilt. It's an optional accessory that I chose to get. It just goes up over your ridgeline and bug net and kind of helps keep that underquilt in place. Next up is my tarp. I keep it in a little REI stuff sack rather than the one it came in. I use a Kelty Noah 12. Kelty makes some great Noah tarps. Very popular in the hammock community. Works really well for me. And I got the 12-foot one, so you'll be able to see how that works out. To start the tarp setup, you want to put in your ridgeline. I use a continuous ridgeline for my tarp. Some people just use a line from the tarp to the tree. I like the continuous ridgeline. It's easy. I've got my system down, so let's get to it. All right, so with my ridgeline, I use these Night Eyes micro figure 9s. It's just much easier for me. You don't have to tie any knots. So you come around the tree with your paracord, you go through that little loop, tighten it, and stick it through this biting area here. And then that's it. Nice and easy, no knots. And then we go to the other side and we do the same thing. What I'm doing here is just adjusting the position of this Night Eyes figure 9 so that when I actually install it around the tree. The continuous ridge line is nice and taut. And you just install it right above your hammock suspension. And again, you're gonna wrap it around and pull it nice and taut, and then just stick it through that biting area. And now your continuous ridge line is all set up. Now what I've done on my continuous ridge line to make setup nice and easy, I've stuck these prusik knot loops on here. They slide back and forth real easy, but then once you put weight on it here, it bites, okay? And that just makes it real easy to set your tarp up. On the top ridge of my tarp, you've got these loops, and I've added micro locking carabiners from Night Eyes. I just take that carabiner, clip it onto my prusik knot on each end. All right, so now that I have it clipped in on both ends, here's the nice thing about that prusik knot. You can just pull that thing right over each end of your hammock, and it makes your tarp nice and taut without having to tie a bunch of knots. It's not the lightest solution in the world. I'm not going for ultralight status backpacking. Just makes it nice and easy for you. Now we're just gonna stake the tarp down. I'm gonna show you how I stake my tarp down just on one end so you get an idea of how it works. I stake the 4 closest in straps into the directly to the ground. And now that we've done that, you can see it leaves these flaps. So I can actually take that and I just get a little stick. And stick it through my loop here. And now I have a door on each end. And I'll do that same thing on both ends of my tarp. So that's pretty much it. That's how I set up my tarp, my hammock, my underquilt, my underbelly, and my sleeping pad for camping in the hammock. Seems like a long process, but I've actually got it down to where I can put my whole hammock system up faster than most of my friends with their tents. And as a result, I get to sleep off the ground in complete comfort, regardless of where we're trying to camp. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something along the way. I look forward to being in the outdoors with you and camping in a hammock.